Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Trisha Shaughnessy, and I'm the Postgraduate Programme Manager here in Cork University Business School. You're all very welcome to our fifth in a series of webinars that we'll be running throughout the spring and summer. The next webinar will take place tomorrow at 12 p.m. and will focus on the current debates in food business and innovation. Today's event will focus on current debates in digital health in relation to the accelerated adoption of digital health technologies. I'd like to welcome our panel, and I would like to sincerely thank them for their time in engaging in this event today. We're delighted to be joined by Professor Keira, founder of the MSc in Digital Health from Cork University Business School, UCC. Dr. Wendy Rowan, the co-director of the MSc in Digital Health for Cork University Business School in UCC. Dr. Keira, who's a Public Health Informatics Registrar with the HSE COVID-19 Contact Management Programme. And finally, we have Dr. Johnny Walker, who's an Australian international medical entrepreneur and a clinically active dual-qualified interventional radiologist and nuclear physician who's operating at the Hermitage Medical Clinic in Dublin. So just a little housekeeping before we kick off. Do feel free to pop any questions you have in the chat function, and we'll do our very best to answer them all throughout the webinar. If we don't get to answer the questions, they will be answered directly after the webinar. If you are interested in applying for either of these programs, the application process is quite straightforward. You apply online at www.ucc.ie/en/apply. Decisions and deadlines are made on a rounds-based system, but I would advise you to apply online as soon as possible, as we will be closing this program once it's full. So first off, to kick off, I'd like to introduce you to Professor Keira, who is one of the directors of the MSc in Digital Health. Thank you so much for joining us today, Keira.
Thank you, Trish. As Trish has introduced me, my name is Keira, and I'm a professor in Business Information Systems at Cork University Business School, and I am a co-founder of the MSc in Digital Health, which is now in its fourth year running. The term digital health is a widely accepted term encompassing all areas of health information systems in the healthcare domain. And as we all know, the area of digital health is experiencing rapid growth, with the market in Europe alone worth over more than 300 billion euros per year, and that's growing year on year. However, a key challenge for this rapidly developing area is the lack of appropriately skilled professionals who have an understanding in the people, process, technology and data challenges facing healthcare during this really significant time of transformation that has really, I suppose, been exacerbated in the past 12 to 15 months with the COVID landscape. In response to this opportunity to support, enable and educate healthcare professionals in this area, we designed, together with a number of colleagues across faculties, the Masters in Digital Health. And it addresses the real growing shortage of skills in this area in Ireland and internationally. And this was highlighted most recently, particularly by Eric Topple, an expert in the area of digital health, in his review of the NHS in 2019, where he called out key skills and opportunities for growth in the healthcare sector and analogous areas around the use of emerging technologies such as AI, decision support, analytics, Internet of Things, and cloud, to name but a few areas. So the MSc Digital Health was developed in collaboration with colleagues at Cork University Business School in the areas of information systems, accounting and economics, and also in collaboration with colleagues in the medical education unit at Cork, at the College of Medicine and Health at UCC, and also with colleagues in the CRFC, the Clinical Research Facility at UCC. We work very closely together with industry partners and practitioners in the area. So since its foundation, the programme engages and leverages the expertise in the health and medtech industry to create value innovation for healthcare. And I suppose our motto really is underpinned by our aim of improving and supporting healthcare professionals in developing their data and digital literacy to get the right data to the right people at the right time. And in doing that, supporting healthcare professionals to better communicate with one another, support their decision making and decision outcomes, and subsequently and hopefully in doing all of these things, positively affect patient outcomes. In designing this programme, we consulted with a number of experts, including the HSE, directors of informatics across acute hospitals, and also we engaged very significantly with partners in Microsoft, Stryker, and Deloitte, and leveraged their expertise in building the programme. The programme includes 6 modules, 3 in the first year and 3 in the second year, across a wide range of complementary areas in order to support and develop some of the key skills that I've mentioned. To date, the MSc in Digital Health has attracted a wide range of participants from a number of diverse backgrounds, including non-consultant hospital doctors, nurses, nursing managers, physiotherapists, health IT professionals, speech and language therapists, pharmacists, occupational therapists, and individuals with backgrounds in data and data analysis in med devices organisations. I just really like to call out maybe some of the unique selling points of the programme. And maybe our number one value proposition is our engagement with a variety of expert guest speakers and lecturers from a diverse range of backgrounds. And I just want to very briefly provide a quote from one of our adjunct lecturers, Mr. Alan Duncan, who's Distinguished Vice President for Data Analytics Strategy and Chief Data Officer at Gartner International, a leading IT research organisation. Healthcare in the 21st century is increasingly dependent on digital technologies, systems, sensors and scanners. More, the data by those technologies has the potential to unlock insights, both clinically and operationally, that provide a myriad of opportunities for healthcare to be transformed. The UCC Digital Health Masters offers a wonderful opportunity for all professionals involved in healthcare to prepare for and thrive in this rapidly changing environment. It's a privilege to be able to contribute to this highly valuable and worthwhile programme. So now I'm going to hand over to my colleague and co-director, Dr. Wendy Rowan, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the programme and career opportunities arising from the programme.
Hello, and thank you for having me on this call. My name is Wendy Rowan, and I work as a lecturer in the Department of Business Information Systems. So the Digital Health Programme is unique in as much as it's a part-time programme over 2 years. And just to give you some background, this year's students on the course came from a variety of professional backgrounds, such as COVID tracking for the HSE, from public health, and from pharmaceutical firms. And working in groups, they are able to manage to learn from each other and to develop at the end of the 2-year course a digital innovation, a socio-technological innovation for their project. So what do we offer the students in terms of speakers? Well, we had a range of speakers this year on the course, and they have included representatives from a company called Educate for Health, who are a communications and digital solutions specialist for healthcare. We also had a representative from Salasso, which is a science-based digital physical rehabilitation and wellness service. And we were also lucky enough to have a speaker from the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, who introduced us to 3D printing for health research, which is cutting-edge technology. And of course, we had Dr. Johnny Walker to talk about the Jingle Life, which offers a cloud-based platform for all family members to record and share their medical records with each other. So as this course is an interdisciplinary course, it is open to many people, and it offers you the unique chance to learn new skills from different specialist areas, such as business information systems, economics, as well as medical education. And as stated by one of our past participants, who said, this course was really well put together. The digital health space is vast and expanding. This MSc course will definitely provide you with skill sets to enable you to achieve your potential. So without further ado, I would now like to hand over to our first speaker, our guest lecturer, Dr. Johnny Walker, who has lectured this year on the programme. After Dr. Johnny Walker speaks, I would then like to introduce you to Dr. Keira Carroll, as she is a past MSc student from this programme. So over to you, Johnny. Thank you ever so much for coming today.
Cheers, Wendy. Thanks for that, and thanks for having me, guys. I don't know why you keep asking me. I mean, there must be younger, fresher, more innovative people than me, but it's a real treat to be here with you, and I thank you for that. I've been asked just to give a little bit about my journey and where we've come in terms of digital health, which is now probably 25 years in. My background is I'm one of 8 kids. I grew up in the Hunter Valley, a beautiful little wine growing area in Australia, and my dad was the country GP for what is still significant area in that it's 200 miles north to south, it's 50 miles east to west, and he was the only GP, and out of necessity became the only surgeon. He had very, very few tools other than his little box of tricks, which we were never allowed to play with. There was the stethoscope and the oroscope, etc. And if ever we were caught playing with them, God, we were straight to bed without any dinner. But that was the only technology he had, and he provided a magnificent service. The only sadness is we hardly ever saw him because he was always up and down the valley. All I ever wanted to do was be a doc, and so I was lucky enough. How I ever did that, I don't know. I get into medicine. I did medicine in Sydney, and after I'd done a Rotary Exchange in Cape Town, and worked in Soweto and a number of other really, really almost, certainly third world centres of excellence, but we saw such volume of trauma, and I just loved what I was doing. Came back, I did the medicine, I then went into surgery, and then along came this thing called interventional radiology, which at the time was incredibly innovative. You'd call it disruptive now in the lexicon of the startups, but it was where we were able to do, instead of doing open surgery with general anaesthetic, we were doing pinhole surgery and entry of the artery and the various vascular networks, etc., and using wires and stents, etc. So it was just a wonderful field, and I thought, my goodness, this is the way it's going to go. And so I pivoted into radiology, and I've never regretted it. It's just been wonderful. I've just done 117 cases in the last few days, a mix of cross-sectional imaging, but also operating Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday is my startup day, so it's great to be here with you. And I've never really lost that passion for being in the trenches at the coalface. And what it does give me, I suppose, is an unfair advantage in that it gives me that insight into the problems that are coming at us, albeit in the acute care setting, but by being connected through to the wider ecosystem in terms of the GP, the community nurse, the physio, the dentist, the pharmacist, etc., and other specialists. I get to see the pain points that the consumer of healthcare is encountering every day. And so after doing that, I went off, and I was fortunate enough to win this sharing fellowship to the Royal Postgraduate Medical School, the Hammersmith Hospital in London. And I quite literally arrived the day they turned on the first ever digital, totally filmless, totally paperless department of its type in the world, what we would now call the RIS PACS, which we're all very familiar with. And when I saw it, I thought, oh my God, what would this technology do in little parts of the world where I came from back in the Hunter Valley? And I became fascinated by that. Wonderful year at the Hammersmith, bit crazy in all honesty, but I was rescued up to from the Hammersmith up to Cambridge, where I had just the most wonderful year from a cultural point of view, academically, socially, sporting-wise. It was just magnificent. And then I was fortunate enough then to be invited across to Stanford, where there was quite a dichotomy between the two cultures. In England, it was, oh, isn't it lovely to have the Aussies here, but we can't take them seriously. Whereas in America, they just sort of stand back and they hose you with petrol and just flame you up if you've got any ideas or passion. So it was a wonderful, wonderful breeding ground for percolation of ideas. And then they offer you this associate professorship. So you've got to get out of the country on the J1, come back in on an H1, etc. And I went back to just to be best man at a mate's wedding down in the southwest corner of Western Australia in the beautiful Margaret River area. And the whales were going past, and it was just one of those magic days. Sadly, my visa got trapped for many, many weeks. So I ended up doing a locum high up in the bush on pregnant Aboriginal ladies. And these ladies, God love them, they had virtually no access to any first world level of care. And one of the biggest causes of death of the Aboriginal women of childbearing age was death during delivery. And one of the biggest causes of that was that Aboriginal mums, there's a tendency, a natural tendency for diabetes, and there's also an accelerated incidence of gestational-induced diabetes. They get the large babies, the macrosomic large bodied babies, who unfortunately get stuck when mum goes to deliver the bub under the baobab tree out in the middle of nowhere, and we lose both baby and we lose mum. And it's one of the biggest causes of death of Aboriginal women of childbearing age is that obstetric crisis. And I was up, my brief was to do ultrasounds out of the back of a truck. I had an older Loca at 500 in the back of the station wagon. I had Albie, the Aboriginal driver. We had a generator in the back, and we just did ultrasounds. We had a 66-gallon drum of water. We were only doing transabdominal. We weren't doing any transvaginal scans at that time. And the idea was to identify, was mum pregnant? What was the gestational age? Where was the placenta? What was the lie of the bub, et cetera, and just to make sure that everything was healthy. And if there was anything worrying, then we had a methodology of literally putting coloured bangles around mum's wrists to be able to follow them up as primitive as that was. And it was this particular day that I saw a complication of pregnancy called a hydatidiform molar pregnancy. Some of you may be well familiar with that, where instead of having the normal baby, it develops from the 3 gestational layers into a highly vascular mass, and that mass has the ability to spread around the body, to metastasize, and therefore it's considered malignant, and yet it hasn't got a single cancerous cell within it. And mum often perishes from hemorrhage from the seeding of those metastases. And so I was really shocked, really, that I felt very alone. I had no way of connecting to my peers, and I felt incredibly isolated. And because the treatment at that stage is hysterectomy, I knew that would have huge social ramifications on mum. And we also had all of the logistical issues of trying to get mum to the nearest hospital to enable us to do that hysterectomy. Now, of course, we do various other techniques, including methotrexate injections. But that was a turning point for me. That was the 11th of 1995, Remembrance Day, and I'll never forget it. And I just thought, look, if we had the technology that we'd had at the Hammersmith, and we were able to sort of put this out here in the outback of Western Australia and connect these small fragmented communities, which were distributed over this sort of enormous geographical area, some 2.5 million square kilometres, and connect these tiny fragmented communities up, maybe we could start offering a really, really meaningful service to these magnificent people. And that's what I started that night. I rang my boss in Stanford, and he said, Johnny, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to build a little connection that sort of connects them back to Stanford so that we can look after them. And he goes, how long do you think it'll take? And I said, I think it might take about 3 weeks. Anyway, here we are, almost 25 years ago to the day that we started that, and fortunately we have built it. And that little practice, I put ads up into the Australian newspapers and over into Palo Alto for expressions of interest into data transfer, and bit by bit I got these people come in, and we built this little system on a 3K copper wire, and it worked. Send an ultrasound from one little patch of Western Australia down south to another little patch of Western Australia down south, and it worked. And Dragon had just come out with the voice rec, so we put the voice recognition software on there, and we were away. And we never looked back. We did our first patient on the 4th of January of 1996, just a few weeks after this all happened. And then from that, we grew a practice with bit by bit. We looked after Harvey, Collydonic, British Management, Margaret River, etc., and high up into the Columbaroo and Kununurra and Wyndham and Fitzroy Crossing. And so bit by bit, we covered WA, and it was just a joy. It really was. It just never stopped. It was 24/7. And then we built something quite sizable. And I linked back to the Centres of Excellence where I'd trained in, and my for second opinions in cases that I just didn't know or I hadn't seen it. Nasty squamous cell carcinoma of the nose, invading the eye, and I suddenly had built this sort of collegiate team that would give me opinions for $50 checks that I used to send out. None of them ever got cashed. And we built this little practice called, which grew into Global Diagnostics. Along came ISDN, then along came the web, and then suddenly the handbrake was off. And we were able to, we were invited into the UK, we were then later invited into Ireland, and bit by bit we built what turned out to be, or still is today, a significant footprint, doing some 3,500 cases around the clock around the world with an average turnaround time of in the vicinity of 13 minutes for some cases, as opposed to 13 days or 13 months as it was when we first set up. And so Global grew into a wonderful practice. We always called it the practice. It was international. We were able to spin images around the clock around the world, whether it was X-ray, ultrasound, CT, MRI, PET CT, etc. And we were able to deliver what we thought meaningful impact on early rapid diagnosis. And I'm really, really proud of that. In Australia, there comes a time when the founding entrepreneur is not necessarily the scale person. That's a different DNA. We brought a DNA team in to do that. And in Australia, we ended up floating on the Australian stock market down there with 2 other regional companies. We've just exited in the UK and more recently, earlier this year, in Ireland to other industry players. And as of yesterday, sadly, the name Global Diagnostics doesn't appear anywhere in the world as of the 1st of June. 1st of June. So that's a bit sad, but the work and the groundwork is continued. And what that allowed me to do is to sort of, the founder's dilemma is to step out, and I really wanted to see if we could stop patients coming into hospital by keeping them well within the community, within the home, and build up a little digital health enterprise called Jingle Life, which was really about empowering the captain of care in every family by giving the captain of care democratization of access to the simple data for everybody she loved in her circle of care. And that's what we did. And then more recently, I've been approached by the team from NetWatch. You may remember they're the virtual security team, and we talked 6 years ago about potentially building a health vertical on the NetWatch platform, but they went pure on security, which was a good thing to do. They've exited that company now, and we got together about a year ago to see whether or not we could build an enterprise which allowed us to support our elderly citizens and enable them to live longer in their homes with dignity, but with safety around themselves and the environment, socially connected at all times, because they do feel invisible, they do feel irrelevant. Bring in a little wellness component around hydration, nutrition, exercise, sleep, mindfulness. And then if we do need to cross the clinical line, we can also provide clinical monitoring around the various biometrics, which we're all now familiar with the census, and that's called Halo Care. And we're really excited to be in that space at the moment. So that's it for me.
That's great. Thank you so much for that, Johnny. That was a fascinating presentation. I'd now like to introduce Dr. Keira Carroll. Keira is our Public Health Informatics Registrar with the HSE COVID-19 Contact Management Programme. Keira, you're very welcome. We seem to be having some technical issues with Keira. So what we might do is just reintroduce Johnny. You didn't have much of a break there, Johnny, but if we could bring you back in again, and we'll also bring in one of the program directors, which is Professor Keira Heaven.
Thank you, Johnny, and fantastic presentation. A presentation I heard a small part of a couple of years back at a Health Innovation Week event, and it's really, I suppose, just in terms of thinking about Halo and has COVID, just in terms of thinking of and has COVID really, I suppose, increased or sped up the progress around that? Has that really created a new impetus to get this kind of care and holistic support in the community for I suppose, older persons? You're on mute, Johnny.
How many times does that get said to me every day? I'm sorry. But yeah, look, Keira, if that's a fair question, you'd think this wonderful wind of COVID would fill every sail. Sometimes, and certainly in Ireland, we have a flotilla of small digital health startups. And in terms of
sorry, Johnny, you're actually still on mute. I think something clicked there.
That?
Yeah, go for
Can you
it.
hear me?
Yeah. I can indeed. Thank
sorry,
you.
Keira, I won't touch anything, I promise. So in terms of the story of my life. But anyway, I think, look, you would have thought that the wind of COVID would be magnificent for everybody in the digital health space. unfortunately, there's a flotilla, particularly in Ireland, but around the world, of small aspirational digital health companies that have great people, passion, product. They haven't really been given the opportunity to execute yet in terms of their MVP. But boy, the timing, and I've been saying the timing's perfect for 10 years, but then along came COVID, and you would have thought, boom, it would have floated all boats. But actually that wind of COVID, the ferocity of that wind and the speed of the impact actually knocked a lot of the small boats over. The wind was just too big for their sails. And you really, you thought you'd be more agile than the bigger IBMs, etc., all the big tankers that are so slow to turn around. And look, fortunately, we're well anchored, we're well funded, we've got track records. So we were blessed in that we had investors who were prepared to come alongside us in behind our own money. But the opportunity in COVID, you would think on a PowerPoint slide, is incredibly compelling. But we still have this lag time. And Keira, I hope I'm not going to offend anyone here, but if I do, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry, in that I think we have this lag between the opportunity and the agility and the aspiration of the startups and the decision-making capability and cadence of the actual purchasers. And unfortunately, in most jurisdictions, it's the public purchaser who is the kingmaker. There are some private players around private health insurance, et cetera, and other fringe players who are looking at getting into digital health. But COVID, you would have thought, would have been the most wonderful, wonderful wind in our sail. And it has been beneficial. But I don't want you to walk away from here thinking, even with something as massive as COVID, and boy, was there a call to arms for that, it has not yet been a game changer in changing the speed for the bulk of the digital health players out there. Certainly some, and I would say, a few have actually been able to take advantage of it. They were well positioned, and the HSE already had relationships with them. They were able to turn it on. They had a business model ready to go, and there to be complimented. And I know you'd be well aware of all of them. But you'd think that this earthquake of COVID would be a call to arms. And I'm hoping that now when we recover, and I know we've just taken the double bang of the cyber ransomware, I'm hoping now that we'll really sit down and build out a methodology of how we can adopt this wonderful innovation that's out there amongst startups and bring them into the fold.
Thanks, Johnny. And actually maybe building on that and thinking about the MSc in digital health and other similar programs, what kind of skills do you think, just before Keira comes in, can we just maybe finish that? Yeah. What kind of skills do you think that healthcare professionals and others who are interested in the space, what do they need?
I think first and foremost, number one is just mindset. You've got to have an awareness, and you've got to have an understanding that the way we're caring for people at the moment, it's bent and it's buckled. It's not yet broken, although these ransom guys nearly broke it last week, but it's bent and it's buckled, and it will break if we continue to deliver care to our people the way we have. We absolutely need to innovate. I think that innovation can't come from the mothership. I think the legacy thinking, the DNA, the culture, the speed and the agility of organisations such as the HSE, Health Department, Western Australia, New South Wales, NHS, etc. They're all very similar. They are not at the cadence that we need to be able to really embrace this innovation. Unfortunately, we tend to be reactive, like COVID. When COVID hit, we were reactive in reaching out and trying to find lifeboats to get us out of this. The same with the ransomware 2 weeks ago. I think we really need to have a mindset in place. We need to build it into the curriculum. The digital health has a place, and we need to have shape, form and structure around that. We need to have the HSE to have a mandate to go off-piste, go outside the lines, well outside the lines, into that space of experimentation. I know there's a fear of failure, and we can't risk patients' health because we're in the sick people business. I think we need to move more into the wellness space, and I think digital really should become part of the curriculum of any healthcare player, alongside anatomy, physiology, pathology, digital. It needs to be there. It can't be only in these wonderful MSc courses that we've got now around the world. We need to build this in to the absolute central axis of our training and our teaching. And we need to encourage people to get out there and give it a pop. And every idea is a good one. And for anyone in the trenches to be able to put their hand up, NHS have been great like this. Put the hand up. I've seen a problem. I've got a simple idea. Okay, let's sit down and let's just bring some shape, form and structure to that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Johnny. I think we have Keira back. So thank you, Johnny. We might come back to you again. I think we have Keira back with her sound intact. Hi, Keira.
Fingers crossed you can hear me this time. So thanks so much, Keira, and thanks to everyone for the invitation to speak here today. I'm really delighted to be back and speaking about the MSc in digital health, which was a real privilege to partake in and something I gained hugely from, both from an academic perspective, but also from a professional and even personal perspective. So it's great to be here today to talk a bit about that. I suppose to give a bit of background about myself, it's probably not as exciting as Johnny's background, but I'll share as much as I can anyway. So I graduated from UCD Medicine in 2015, and my passion in life was always women's health and supporting women, particularly through pregnancy and the postpartum period. So I started training in obstetrics and gynecology, which was primarily based in the Rotunda Hospital. And it was during that period that I suppose I was first really exposed to digital health when the Rotunda Hospital implemented MNCMS, which is the National Maternity Electronic Health Record. And so that was where this love for digital media and its application in healthcare really first started for me. So when the electronic health record was implemented, I suppose it was really exciting for me. I'd never worked with such technology before, and it was a great opportunity, I suppose, to see how technology could be leveraged to improve clinical care, to allow us as healthcare workers to perhaps work more efficiently and more effectively. And something that I've always been interested in is postgraduate medical training, and I really saw that things like platforms like electronic health records could be effective ways of providing training and guidance, especially to those of us at earlier stages in our career at the point of care. So it was a great project to see rolled out, and something that it was really exciting to be part of so early in my career. However, there were also frustrations in that in many ways the platform did not work as well as it could have, again, particularly for someone like myself who was just starting out and perhaps needed a bit more support and guidance than some of the more experienced colleagues who perhaps would have been more involved in the design and implementation of that program. So from that, I got really involved in the MNCMS project itself, and that was what prompted me to study the MSc in digital health. I thought it was a really valuable opportunity to enhance my own skill set in the area, and hopefully use those skills to enhance programs like MNCMS, and in turn improve the care that we provide to our patients while also enhancing the working lives of clinicians. So I started the MSc in digital health back in 2018, I believe. And during the first year of the program, I worked as an informaticist with the MNCMS program. So it was a really great time for me to apply the learnings from the MSc directly to my day-to-day life. And from the very start of the program, it brought me great value in terms of what I was able to deliver on the ground within the Rotunda and to the national team. For the second year then of the programme, I transitioned to a different role within the HSE, where I became the National Fellow for Innovation and Change with National Doctors Training and Planning. And within this role, I led the Spark Innovation Programme, which I think speaks to or aims to achieve some of what Johnny just spoke to around supporting that kind of bottom-up approach to innovation, and more importantly, encouraging healthcare staff to be less risk averse, encouraging them to identify problems and to implement solutions, obviously minimizing risk wherever possible, but also I suppose the programme really recognised that frontline healthcare workers are best placed to identify problems and then implement solutions. And a huge part of that program was around the adoption of health information technology, and again trying to upskill our frontline healthcare staff in the digital health sphere so that our staff are well equipped to adopt new technologies, that they're aware of the risks, and that they're keen to disseminate technology to improve clinical care, which is what our goal is always to do, of course. Of course, then during this time, COVID hit, and I was redeployed from the Spark programme to work with the HSE's contact management program. So this was the national contact tracing service that was set up in response to COVID-19. And for me, this was an exceptionally exciting time. I got to work with the team that were involved in designing the information system, the COVID Care Tracker, which is being used to support a number of COVID healthcare needs. So we do all of our contact tracing via this service, but we also issue communications to all of those who've been tested. We do some of our acute hospital data capture and collection reporting, and then we also use this to communicate with colleagues in assessment hubs and other centres providing COVID care. So this project has been absolutely huge in terms of the workload that's gone into it, and the number of users that engage with it on a daily basis. And I think it's been a departure from the usual methods that are used to develop health information technology, where usually things would be very slow and take a lot of time. With the COVID Care Tracker, I think we had 8 releases within the first month of its or since its inception. So things moved very rapidly, and it was really a very agile approach, which for me was very exciting and quite a departure from what I'd previously experienced. I've been working with the contact management program for 15 months now nearly, and my role has changed during that time. So initially I was largely focusing on the design of the system and trying to adapt it so that it worked well for clinical staff in particular. More recently, I've transitioned more into a data analytics role, and I think it's in this role that I'm really applying what I've learned from the MSc most effectively. So it's really what Keira spoke to earlier on around taking the technology, the process, the people, and then the data that arises, and being able to use that to provide meaningful insights to multiple different stakeholders. So in my current role, I would have engagements with groups like IMAG, HICWA, the Department of Health. We produce regular outputs for the HSE, SMT, and for NEFIT as well. So I think it's been a really valuable opportunity for me to take all of the things that I learned from the MSc and apply them really effectively to respond to the pandemic and the crisis that our healthcare service could have been in had we not responded as effectively as we did. So yes, in the midst of all of this, I finished my thesis, which again was a challenge, but I have to say the support that I got throughout the programme, but particularly over the final months from Keira and from the rest of the staff, was just incredible. And for that alone, I would recommend the programme so highly. That mentorship and support really helped me to develop my skills and really helped me to, I suppose, keep going despite the challenges. So my thesis was on the impact of the implementation of the electronic healthcare record on NCHDs or junior doctors in the Rotunda Hospital. And it just allowed me to get a sense of the challenges faced by this group specifically, and to then take the learnings from that and provide potential solutions that could be used to enhance the electronic health record for patient care, but also to improve the working lives and the ability for trainees to learn through their jobs from the research as well. So yeah, I think that's a lot about me. So I don't know if Keira wants to chat a bit further.
Fantastic, and thank you so much, Keira. We overcame our technical difficulties. I don't know if we're also going to see Johnny and Wendy join the call also, just for some questions. Keira, I'm maybe just going to follow up. So in some ways, it's not that long ago that you graduated from UCD as a doctor, and yet you've had so many diverse roles since then. I suppose, can you maybe just tell us a little bit about that, and particularly in terms of your interest in the kind of the technology and the data, and maybe the innovation, and maybe what do you see your next steps being?
So yes, Keira, I've taken an unusual path and one that's perhaps less structured than many of my peers. So I think for me, the reason I was drawn to medicine initially was that I was always interested in problem solving, and I was always interested, I suppose, in patient care and the training of doctors and ensuring that they had the tools that they needed to provide the best care possible. And when I was exposed to digital health in the form of the electronic healthcare record in particular, I just saw such an opportunity to provide all of those various facets in, I suppose, one central platform. So that was really what drew me into the digital health space, and particularly working with electronic healthcare records. And then I think it's as my skills developed over the course of the MSc, and then the experience that I've had in the various roles, that again, it's just highlighted to me time and time again how important it is to have healthcare workers from the front line involved in the design of any new system, but also recognizing the key ability that we have to identify problems, and then to propose solutions, and implement them as well. Like, we all are so passionate about improving things for our patients, and it's really just a question of equipping us to do that through resourcing, but then also developing our skills so that we have the ability to implement the necessary changes.
Thanks, Keira. Johnny, I can see you nodding as Keira talks. Do you want to maybe come in there? Is there something you want to add to that?
No, I think it's great, Keira. And listen, congratulations. It's really, really brave, to come out of medicine and then take this path unknown. This is really uncharted territories you're in. I'm so envious of you. I mean, what a time to be, at your stage of your career with this runway in front of you, and now, armed with this, the MSc and all of the learnings that brings. And listen, I haven't done the MSc, but I'm envious of all of you who have. But to be able to do that and then bring those learnings is really, really important. I think we're not going to underestimate, and I know there's a warm and fuzzy meeting here now, but look, we're not going to underestimate how bloody tough it is to bring about change in any healthcare system anywhere in the world, first world right through to third world. There is so much vested interest, not in any malicious way or anything like that, or any skullduggery. It's just that it's so entrenched in the way it's always been done, and therefore to bring about any significant and meaningful, measurable, impactable change, it's really, really difficult to change that mindset. And I think we've got to get rid of that fear of failure. I think we really need to pour petrol on our crews in the trenches that are with us at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they have that empathy, they have that passion, they have that real purpose, and it's real. It's not just window dressing, it's real. And when they come up with an idea and say, Johnny, do we actually need to do that step? And when you map out your circle of delivery, your circle of success, every single link in the chain of delivery for that patient, there are 2 or 3 or 4 links in there, as lean theory would have us taught, is that they're actually redundant. We don't need them. Or we could replace them by just very simple solution. And not all of that is digital. A lot of that's just workflow. This is why I think the learnings from places like aviation, I think we have so much to learn from logistical excellence, so that we can deliver that clinical excellence, which we're all aspiring to do, but we need to have that operational excellence right underneath it. Otherwise, if the operational level of delivery is down here, the whole service will drop down to here, no matter how good you try and be clinically. The other way around, if our clinical is dog's breakfast and down here, and we've got operational up here, it'll still fall down to the lowest common denominator. And I think what we need to do is really aspire to deliver best practice in this new world, and digital has to be a part of that. And that operational excellence, including digital, must be aligned to our clinical aspiration at every level in healthcare. And not only within healthcare, we've got to listen to our consumers of health, our people that we're caring for. They are the best observers of what's right and what's wrong in terms of what works and what doesn't. And we really need to, look, listen, design, disrupt, transform, as the Stanford ethos would have you do. I think we need really to listen to those that we care for, so that we can care for them better.
Absolutely.
Was I on mute?
You weren't on mute. No, we would have told you.
Maybe I should have been.
Wendy, do you want to come in with some further questions there?
Yeah, and it follows on from what Johnny just said about the consumer or the healthcare user. I mean, we have lots of digital technologies, but one of the main problems we find is how do we get that translated into action so that they can actually use it at the other end? So to make it simple and easy, so what would you suggest we can do for people on the receiving end of healthcare digital interventions? I'm going to put that to Keira first, if you don't mind, Keira.
And I think patients are very keen to adopt technology. I mean, most of us in our daily lives, in every other aspect of our lives, we use technology for almost everything. So I think there is a huge appetite amongst patients. Again, coming from maternity where patients are young, they're very tech savvy, and they are very conscientious and want to do their best throughout their pregnancy. We had huge uptake of any technologies that were offered. I suppose there is always the risk, and I think things like the recent ransomware attack will perhaps heighten the perceived threat or risks that patients will be concerned about. So I think the best thing that we can do is ensure that we have appropriate, I suppose, security in place, and that anything that's patient facing has the appropriate clinical governance as well, because I think there's a lot of kind of privately marketed tools, and it's just to make sure that they are designed with patients in mind, and not coming perhaps from a more commercial perspective. So I think that would be how I would certainly progress with it. I don't know if Johnny has to add.
So I'm my what do you call it? Not muted? Can you hear me? You can. Yeah, look, Keira, I agree, but don't underestimate the power of innovation that's going to come from outside the system. And, a lot of that is going to be for profit. They aren't not for profit. They have a cost of capital. They have a cost of people, time and dollars. And they have investors. They share a very similar purpose, and certainly it's as honourable and admirable as the the government organisations themselves. Please, we need to engineer a methodology of embracing that phenomenal innovation that occurs outside of the mothership. If a lot of this innovation was allowed to percolate and grow within the mothership of these large organisations, then the immune system of the mothership will completely destroy the innovation. That innovation has to be outside the mothership. That could still be members who grow up through the system, but I'd be embracing people outside of the system. And the speed, the agility, our responsiveness is just so fast. You will not get that in the organisations such as the HSE. Full marks to the NHS. The NHS, we opened up there in 2002. Boy, oh boy, it was a 2-year turnaround for an MRI of the lumbar spine. And we turned that around into 3 days. That was disruptive and transformative, not only for our patients, but obviously for our enterprise, which we were able to grow. You've got to be able to embrace that sort of cadence. And the NHS have, they've really come so far. I know it's almost 2 decades, but to me, it's like 2 or 3 years they've come. And I think we need to do the same thing with the HSE. We've got so many good people in there, so many good people, and so many more who have done the MSc now. And we're not pushing it at a closed door anymore. They get it. But we've got to somehow free them from the harness of the systems, the processes, the reporting, and etc., the risk adversiveness, if that's a word, that is in institutions such as the HSE and various other government healthcare delivery bodies around the world in the markets that I've operated in. We've got to really pour petrol on innovation and have the systems and processes around to be able to be there to ensure they don't go completely off-piste and they're not dangerous or delinquent. But we need to be able to really not promise startups an opportunity of success, because, that's unreal as well, but at least give every horse in the race who wants to race and jump those hurdles and have the courage and the ambition to jump those hurdles. We need to give them the opportunity of that. If you can do this, there is an opportunity to grow an enterprise of some significance around the way we care for the people on our planet.
I agree completely, Johnny. Thanks for that, and thank you, Keira. I'm just wondering, just to follow up, and we're kind of running out of time. Just in terms of the role of academia and thinking about roles that are the programs such as the MSc in digital health, what role can we play in supporting and facilitating that? Johnny, I suppose specifically, and maybe Keira might follow up.
Keira, I'm going to say you got to get down and get dirty. You've got to get in the trenches, get wet, get blood on your hands, get in there. And I know that's the acute care setting, but really get out there and smell it and taste it, touch it, feel it, get bruised by it. Because until you do, I don't think you'll really understand the challenges we're up against every day. Otherwise, it has that, and I don't want to offend you, I love you, or you know that, but it has the potential of just becoming another academic program, and we tick boxes. We've put 30 students through, and they've done 2 years and such, and there's a payment for that and all that sort of stuff, and we're doing all the right things. I think you've really, really got to bring it alive and get everyone out there in the trenches and let them come up with haywire ideas. And if they fail quickly. And the beautiful thing about the academic arena, they can fail through modelling. They don't have to go out and damage anyone. But at some stage, you've got to get out there and get in the trenches. Now, I know you try and do that to a degree, but I would almost be bringing yourselves to the trenches and letting, I've got Steve, who brings our patients down. He is the most fundamental driver of the safety, the speed, the effectiveness, the productivity of our CAT scan room. Phenomenal. If anything happens to Steve, our entire circle of care is going to fall apart. And yet Steve's got some fantastic ideas of how we can do it faster, better, safer, more effective, more efficiently. And that doesn't even touch on digital. When you get him to start drawing it, my God, digital just leaps off the page. So the academics, don't make it too theoretical. Don't make it stiff. Don't make it too liquid and useless and just rubbish at the end of the 2 years. Make it meaningful, but get out there and let the market need really shape your learnings, and in terms of your program and your curriculum, build those learnings back in, and almost don't set your curriculum in this world. Don't set it anything more than 24 months ahead, because I think within 24 months your curriculum is going to be obsolete. You need to be at a cadence where you really, really are fluid enough to move with where this market is. And when you do that, it'll become incredibly powerful.
Thanks, Johnny. And there's certainly things we're trying to do and working hard to do more of. And Keira, we work hard at this.
I'm not a professor for a very good reason.
Keira, as someone who has experience of the program, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, so I think for me, like I've acquired all this knowledge and passion, and it's what to do with that next. And I totally agree. For me, the strength that I got from the program was that I was so embedded in applying what I was learning in my day-to-day practice. And every session that I would finish, I would go back to my day job and be able to apply more and more. So I definitely think it's having the ability to apply what you're actually learning in practice. But I think in some ways I would disagree with what Johnny has said about the lack of structure. I think structure is actually needed in some regards for this, because I think there is a growing number of people who are really passionate about this area, who want to learn more, who might undertake a program such as the MSc in digital health, and then it's what the next steps are for them and how they can continue to develop their skills, their knowledge, and then their opportunities to apply what they're learning in their day-to-day practice. And certainly for me, I've been very lucky in the path that I found myself on, that I have endless opportunities to apply my learnings. But it's just to make sure that that's, I suppose, it bedded down, and that those opportunities are perhaps more formalized.
I think maybe just one final question. If there was one piece of advice you would offer someone who's working in healthcare, shopping around for an opportunity for further learning and development, what would you give them? What would you say to them? Keira, yeah, please.
I think what I'd say is find the thing that bugs you and find the thing that drives you mad. Because any of the projects, for example, that I did with the masters, the ones that I got the most from were the things that really drove me mad. And then to work through them, to apply what I've learned from the masters and then solve them, or at least improve them, it's hugely satisfying. And I think any of us working in an organization like the HSE or further afield will see lots of problems problems and lots of things that we feel we could do better. So I think it's identifying those opportunities and then finding a program that will enable you to solve them, hopefully.
Johnny, do you have a word of advice for anyone in that position?
No, I agree. I just think, look, have the bravery to back yourself, because, you know, one person can, you know, put their hand up and say, listen, I just think there's a better way. There's a better way. Why are we doing this? Always question why. Don't be, you know, aggressive or obnoxious or anything, but why do we do that? Always be challenging. Always be in your own mind. Why? And, you know, can we do it better? And, you know, the great thing is, you know, we do have programs like this, and I'm not peeing in your pocket here. And Keira, I'm not against shape, form, structure. You should see me in operating theatre. I am so anal. I have such shape, form, structure. But I just think you need to have that fluidity. And I would love to see this become part of our nursing program, part of our medical curriculum. I think the MSc will ultimately, within 10 years, it'll be something quite spectacular. And hopefully the spectacularness will be outside of the domain. And that, you know, that'll be around whatever happened to blockchain and all the other stuff that's happening to us at the moment. But the great thing is there's a place to go. 20 years ago in my world, there was no place to go when you were an innovator. And when, you know, if you ever use the word entrepreneur, my God, you know, geez, you know, the Royal College of Surgeons, the Royal Australian New Zealand College of Radiologists, Jesus, Johnny, you know, what are we going to do with him? And now most of them work for Global Diagnostics. But anyway, that said, you've got to be able to embrace that. And I think it's just so important. Really back yourself and be brave. Like Keira, you know, taking that step. Keira could have gone on and done medicine or surgery, general practitioner, which we need good ones. But boy, you know, what a risk it was to do what you've done, Keira. And I'm hoping the HSE, you know, pour lots and lots of petrol on you.
And so do we, Johnny. Wendy,
In a good
any
way.
And we'll
any
stand
further
back
questions?
and we'll just fan the flames.
So yeah, look, the course is open for applications. We have a lot of successful stories from past students. It's an exciting course. It's part-time. It can fit around your professional work life. So what's stopping you? Just sign up.
Thanks, Wendy. And thank you so much to Keira, Carol and Johnny Walker for their fantastic insights and time and sharing their experience this afternoon. We really appreciate it. I'm just going to go back to our postgraduate manager at the Cork University Business School, Trish O'Shaughnessy, for the final words. Thanks, Trish. Trish, you're on mute.
Thanks, Keira. So thanks to all our speakers and the panel for their time and engaging with the event today. A particular thank you to Johnny Walker and Keira Carl for some genuinely fascinating insights. I'd also like to thank our CUBS media team who guided the panel so expertly through the event today. So just a final reminder, following up from Wendy, if you do wish to apply for this programme, you can apply online at www.ucc.ie/en/apply. So tomorrow we do have another postgraduate webinar, and that's going to be focusing on the current debates in food business and innovation at 12 p.m. And I suppose finally, I'd really like to thank all our viewers who registered today and attended this event. And I wish you the very best of luck with your application for the programme. Thank you.